When I dragged that thing home, everyone thought I was nuts. The story of Evolve really started back in like the summer of 2005, 2006. Back then, I was running the boat renovation business. We were up in Minnesota on Lake Minnetonka. That lake is known for its big open day boats. Everybody loves the 26 skiff craft up there and the 310 amberjack. And I was constantly doing them. I just had a constant string of 26-foot skiff crafts and 310 amberjacks, and I was doing, everything. They're bringing the amberjacks up from Florida, and they were usually saltwater beat boats. The skiff crafts, that's a wood boat, a lapstrake hull wood boat with all the wood boat maintenance. We were doing a ton of varnish and planks in the bottom and all kinds of stuff. And I just kept thinking that there's got to be a better solution here. Neither one of those boats really, I felt like, was the ultimate solution. And at the time, I just loved what Van Dutch was doing. Of course, I love Riva. Everything Riva does, I love. And I thought, there's got to be a better solution. And it's funny, everybody thinks that, oh, Bart, he finds these junky old boats and then somehow fixes them up. It's just the opposite of that. What I do, I come up with a concept and I know what I want, and then I start looking for a hull. And then I don't care what the rest of it looks like. I really don't care what the deck looks like. The deck's likely coming off or coming apart. In the case of Evolve, it was a cabin cruiser. So what I found was a 1974 Trojan F26, and a very solid boat, big boat, and a real 26 feet from bow to stern is solid 26 feet, not including swim platform and all that. And it was a wide boat. That hull, I believe, was 10.5 feet wide. So perfect size, solid 26, wide beam, and relatively inexpensive. I mean, you could get them fairly cheap, but they were ugly. The deck, it was a ugly old cabin cruiser and something really nobody really wanted. But what was the hidden gem underneath was that hull. That was a pretty hull. So I started taking photos of them and running them through Photoshop and cutting the top off. I was cutting the whole deck off and then moving the windshield forward and getting the right rake on the windshield, getting the right size, and that thing just magically came to life. And when I did the first one on Photoshop and I saw what it looked like, I was like, this is it. This boat is beautiful, and no one's ever going to believe. So I started looking for 26 F26 Trojans, and lo and behold, I found one like a mile from my house. And the guy didn't want much money for it. And the motor had already been rebuilt. And so I made a deal with him, and I bought the boat for $4,500. And came with a trailer and everything. And when I dragged that thing home, I think everyone thought I was nuts. Everyone except my wife. My wife knows when I get a project in my head like this, I've got a vision. Something cool is gonna come of it. But my friends, my neighbors, everybody else was like, this thing, what are you doing with this thing? So I dragged it to the shop. First thing we had to do is sand the bottom paint off of it. And amazingly, I talked my wife into helping me, and we laid underneath that thing with a massive fan and 2 big sanders, and we put on Tyvek suits and the whole deal, and we laid under there, and God bless her heart, we sanded that whole bottom in an afternoon. It was awful, but we got it done and got it cleaned up, and then we brought it into the shop. And then I got out the Sawzall, and within about 2 days, I had the entire deck off and cut up and thrown in the dumpster. and it was just a big open tub. And luckily, the nice thing about the F26, it's mostly, on the inside, it was mostly wood. So it made it really easy once I had that, fiberglass deck off of it and the upper structure. The rest of it was relatively easy to cut apart and do what I needed to do. Now, unfortunately, the stringers were shot. And I mean, they were about the consistency of soggy breakfast cereal. So we pulled the motor, and again, my wife helped me. We took the forklift and pulled the motor out, and then I cut into those stringers, and what a mess that was. But it wasn't too bad. The biggest challenge there was that the stringers had a really crazy shape to them, and an odd size. Like, it wasn't like a lot of boats, a lot of fiberglass boats, they'll use a 2x6 and glass it in, or something that's common sized. These were not. These were like really odd size. They were like 3 inches wide by 8 inches tall, and with a really weird shape to them. So I had to make that, and I had to laminate a bunch of pieces together and run it through the table saw and get it all right. And I epoxied the whole thing together and got it cut to shape, and then I bonded it in. I've got my own process for doing stringers. I've done so many of them, and I'll say one thing: that F26, most of the time when you do stringers, you have to support the bottom of the boat and make sure nothing's moving. Once you get those stringers off or out, you don't want anything flexing or moving. Because when you bond it back together, you're gonna bond a flex. You're gonna bond a curve into the hull, which of course is a bad thing. But I tell you what, I got all those stringers out of there. I got all that wood out, cleaned it out. I cut the tops of the fiberglass to pull the wood out. That thing was so solid in the bottom, I could jump up and down in the bottom of that thing and nothing was moving. So I didn't have to worry about anything there. That hull is so solid. So I bonded the new stringers in and re-fiberglassed over the top, gave the inside of the engine bay a nice white coated gel coat, and then all we had to do really is clean that motor up and put it back in. It had already been rebuilt, and it was very clean, and it ran perfect. So then it was just a matter of starting to do the wiring and all that. So I mean, I stripped out everything. There wasn't a single wire left from the original harness. So that was the first thing I did, and then I started building the structure for the floor. And what I wanted to do, my vision for that boat, because it was a single screw inboard, which at 26 feet that can be a challenging boat to dock. But it had a really deep keel to it. And so my vision was, if I put a stern thruster in there, you should be able to turn that thing in its own length. And so what I did, I ended up making my own stern thruster with 2 trolling motors. I had my metal guy weld up a stainless steel bracket that held 2 trolling motors nose to nose. And then I wired them to only run in forward, because trolling motors have very little thrust in reverse. So when you wanted to spin the boat clockwise, the starboard trolling motor would run full speed. The port side would not run, and vice versa. When you wanted to spin it counterclockwise, you'd turn on the port motor. So I made a switch under the dash that was basically a little toggle. You pushed it one way and it spun the boat that way, and you pushed it the other way and it spun the boat the other way. And that was a game changer. That boat, you can put that thing in the most difficult docking situations. I talked to the guy who owns it today, and he just marvels at that stern thruster. He's like, you wouldn't believe the docking I do. So I go into these restaurants and these people are like, we'll help you. He's like, I got it. I got it. And they're like, how'd you get it in there? It's like, I got it. So that was a cool deal. But my vision for the interior of that boat was to drop the floor. The original floor sat above the motor. but I wanted it to be lower so that the seating could be around the perimeter, especially on the port side, and I wanted the backrest to be no higher than the shear line of the hull. So what I ended up doing is dropping the floor 7 inches from the original height. So I dropped the floor 7, that had the motor sticking up roughly 5 inches out of the top of the floor, which was fine because what I wanted to do is run the seating down the port side and then have a perimeter come out. So it would come out, go around the motor, and come back along and around the back again. So it was like an L with a U. And I had been on a boat years before that had a seating configuration kind of like that. And I just thought it was one of the most usable spaces, and everybody loved it. It was so social. There was, 2 big social areas, and everyone was together. And I just thought that's what I'm doing with this boat. And so it worked out really good. So I brought the seating down the port side, came out and around the motor. The seat was like 4 feet wide right there, so I had a back-to-back and then a perimeter, and it went around and then back around to the second U-shaped seat in the back. And that really worked out well. I moved the dash from where it was originally, I moved it forward 9 feet. So from the stern, from the inside of the stern up to the dashboard, it was 17 feet. So there was 17 feet of usable space in there, and wide, with that 10.5-foot beam. It was a wide boat. So it just made just a great social area for that boat. And I made the floor super sturdy. I over-engineered the structure under the floor. I didn't want anything flexing. I knew that boat would be a party boat. I knew there'd be a lot of people on it for entertaining. So I made that structure, over-engineered, and it was totally solid and very usable. As I was envisioning this boat, I wanted to do a walk-through transom. That wasn't something they did in '74. And so I was a little worried because anytime you cut a big hole in the transom like that, you got to be well above the water line, obviously, but you can end up with an unstable hull. And so I just figured I'll go ahead and cut the hole the way I want it to be, and if I have to reinforce with fiberglass around it, I'll do what I have to do. Luckily, that boat was built so solidly that I cut that transom hole, and that thing nothing moved. It was rock solid, so I didn't really have to do anything except dress that opening. And and then I needed a swim platform. The original swim platform was like 1.5 feet wide, and it was teak, and it was tired. Not what I wanted. I wanted a big 3-foot swim platform, and so I went ahead and I made my own mold. I made my own plug and pattern, and then I made my own mold and had a local fiberglass shop that I work with all the time. They built the swim platform for me. It was brand new with the non-skid on it and the whole thing. Now, that didn't matter so much for me. I was putting the same flooring on the swim platform as I did on the rest of the boat. But when that swim platform went on, and of course I had to make custom bracketry to go hold it up, because I knew, Lake Minnetonka is a party lake, and I knew there were going to be a lot of people standing on it, potentially a lot of people all at once. So it had to be strong. And the windshield was a huge challenge. It was like, what am I going to do with this for a windshield? And I managed to find a brand new windshield made by Taylor, a boat company that had gone under. I don't remember the name of it. There were like 4 or 5 brand new windshields left over, and I bought one of them, and it really worked out well. I had mocked it all up out of cardboard, and so I knew, I mocked it up out of cardboard, and I kept changing the shape and the height and the rake and the length, and kept working on it until it was really the way I wanted it. And then eventually, when I kind of had everything the way I thought it should be, then I took all the measurements and I started looking for a windshield that would kind of fit the bill. So I found this Taylor windshield, and it worked perfect. The only issue was it was too narrow because it came from a smaller runabout. It was kind of a low profile windshield. At least it looked low profile on the Trojan, and but it was too narrow. But luckily, all I had to do was widen the center section, the opening section, and so I called my friends over at TaylorMade, and I told them what I was doing, and they found me a couple scraps. I just needed a top rail and a bottom rail for that center section. The end sections were fine, and then I had a local glass company make me a piece of glass to go in the middle. And then I had the whole windshield painted gloss black, and then I had to mold the deck basically to match the windshield. So I came up, I believe, 4 or so inches off the deck, and I made a custom raked molding that went right into the deck. I did that all out of epoxy and got all the body work done so that the windshield really looked seamless. And then in my drawings, I had always had this trim piece above the windshield to give it some real thickness and some real depth to the windshield. And by that point in the project, I was ready to say, I don't know, that just seems like a lot of extra work. But my wife was adamant. She'd seen the drawings, and she's like, no, you drew that in there, and that's one of the coolest elements of that boat. You have to do it. So, so I did, and I'm really glad that she talked me into it, because it's absolutely one of the signature elements of that hull, of that boat. That windshield, that trim on the top of the windshield, it really makes that thing pop, and it really makes it look different than everything else. They say wheels make a car, but for the most part, windshield makes a boat. So we worked a long time on the color scheme. I don't know how many different color schemes we thought of, and we went round and round and round, and we were going to do it one way, and then we decided no, and then we thought we'd do something else, and we finally settled on that bronze color. It looks kind of gold. People call it the gold boat, but it's actually called bronze. And, or no, I think it's called brass. It's called brass. And it's a wrap color. And we decided early on that boat was going into the shop and it was coming out finished, which meant that it wasn't going to leave to go get paint. I'm a big believer in wrapping these big boats. From my days back in the renovation business, there's always, people wanted to paint their boats different color, but the problem is nobody's got a paint booth big enough for a 26-foot, 10.5-foot wide, boat. The paint booths are made for cars. So nobody has a paint booth big enough. So they end up painting them in some barn or some shed or outside, and you end up with dirt in the paint and bugs in the paint, and it's usually not a good paint job. It's usually not prepped well. So I really became a firm believer in wrapping these boats. And it's nice because if something happens to it, if you scrape it on a dock, you can peel that wrap off and put a new piece on. It's super easy to fix. In fact, the guy who bought the boat, who owns it today, it's been now, 10 years? 8 years, I guess, probably 10 years since it was wrapped, and he just had it rewrapped, and he's happy as a clam with it, and it looks like brand new again. So my wife and I, that was the first. I had wrapped a few things in the shop. I'd wrapped a couple boats, not the full boat, but like some decal stripes. So that was the very first boat we ever tried to wrap, and I tell you what, it was a learning experience. And again, my wife helped me, and it took us, I think, 8 hours to wrap the first side. We started with the port side, and then I think the next side we did in about maybe half that time. But it really came out great, and the wrap was super durable. It's like I said, it's lasted 10 years. The only reason, he had to rewrap it is just from, dock rash and, ropes and, just use over time. It hadn't worn out. It's just, but it was an easy rewrap for him. They got the exact same color. He had talked about maybe wrapping it some different colors, but they ended up wrapping it the exact same color, and it just looks fantastic. And the thing is, nobody had that color. That was one of the things that we were really adamant about, that we wanted this boat to look different. We didn't want it to be another white boat or another blue boat. We wanted it to have a unique look, and that brass color really did a nice job. Everybody loves it, and then we got the flooring and the upholstery and all the interior colors to match with that wrap color. I was even able to wrap the spokes of the steering wheel so that it all matched together. The dash, the steering wheel, everything really came together. So it was a 3.5 year project. In my spare time, basically, I say nights and weekends. I would go into the shop early and work on it a couple hours every morning. And after it was about 2.5 years, it was time. I think it was spring of 2018, and it was time to put it in the water. And boy, that was exciting. We took it outside and fired it up, and it ran great. And of course, I had never ridden on the boat before. I just dragged it home and started tearing it apart. I never went for a test ride or anything. So I was just hoping and praying that I hadn't done something to screw up the weight distribution, make it sit weird in the water or whatever. But I kind of figured that the weight that I had taken off of it, removing the superstructure and the roof, probably was, more than what I had added back in. So anyway, we took it to the launch ramp, and my friend backed me in, and I fired it up, put it in reverse, and it just worked flawlessly. Not a vibration. It ran perfect and just drove perfect, which is, anyone who knows anything about the marine industry is like, that's unheard of. Even brand new boats, they'll put them in the water for a sea trial, and there's always something, usually a couple things that you have to fix. And this thing, was just rock solid, just from the word go. I took it straight from the ramp, and I took it out in the lake and waited till it was good and warmed up, and opened it up, and it popped right up on plane and just ran so smooth and so nice, and handled good. And I was in hog heaven. I was ecstatic. After all those years and all that work and all that worry about what's going to happen, but it really turned out beautiful. And to this day, everywhere that boat goes, that boat turns heads. The guy who owns it today, he absolutely loves it. He and his wife, they are the perfect people to own that boat. They're a young couple. They're so classy, and they deserve a classy boat, and that boat deserves classy owners. And I tell you, that's a match made in heaven right there. And they use it a lot. That boat is all over. It's still up on Lake Minnetonka. I've long since moved to Florida, but I still see pictures of it all the time on Facebook. People, send me pictures of it, and I see their Facebook feed, and they're out in it all the time. It's an awesome boat, and he's got some great stories. He drives it into the restaurants, and the dock boys come out and they're like, "I've never seen anything this cool." It's like, so it's really gratifying to see it. But I need to go up there and get some new content so that I can make a part 2 to this video. But it's been really a fun project, and it's really gratifying to have the person who owns it today. He's told me, he's like, "I will never sell this boat." He's like, "I absolutely love it, and I will never sell it." He named it after his wife. That's really cute, and they're just great. So I couldn't be happier with who owns the boat today.